Everybody, and welcome to our intergroup session, which is to discuss the 2024 European elections. So we are already preparing the ground today and the inclusion of animal welfare in the group's manifestos. So I know that you probably are not yet ready with your manifestos of the political groups, but that's why we try to influence already or to discuss about it already now. And as you are all aware, animal welfare is a top priority for the citizens. I don't come back with the figures now of the Eurobarometer, you know that. When it comes to representation at the European level, we can see this through many also European citizens' initiatives that have come through the European Parliament in this legislative term, the countless civil society organizations across the Union dedicated to animal welfare, and of course the European Commission's ongoing revision of the European animal welfare acquis. So the objective of today's session is to discuss the most pressing animal welfare issues at European level and how the different groups can include them in their manifestos. So we are joined today, and I'm very happy, by Reineke Hammerleers, the CEO of Intergroup for Animals, Sirpa Pietikainen, a member of the EPP group. She's on her way, I've heard, so she's coming. Niels Fulksan is already here. He's member of S&D. Thomas Weitz, my colleague from Greens EFA. And then Martin Heusig, I think is not coming, but Petras is there. Petras Austrevicius, member of Renew Europe. So before I hand over to the speakers, I would like to make a brief announcement. First of all, regarding oral questions to be signed by all MEPs interested. So the Intergroup for Free Europe working group has initiated the proposal for an oral question on fur farming and the placement on fur products on the European market, which aims to inquire about the steps the European Commission will take to deliver on the European Citizens' Initiative for Free Europe that gathered 1.5 million European citizens' signatures. And for this, the Intergroup Secretariat has already contacted you. So if you wish to support the initiative, you can confirm it via online form, which is contained in the message you receive. The letter is also here. Also, it's also circulating if you...
Circulating that you can sign.
Yeah. So it's also, the paper is also circulating in the room if you want to sign for it for Free Europe. I will now, as usual, highlight the practical aspects of the running session. Right after the session, MEP can show their support for the inclusion of animal welfare concerns in their manifestos for European elections with an individual photo. You did that already. Besides, that is maybe good to know, I would like, or it would be nice if we make also a group picture afterwards. As always, this meeting is streamed on Interactio. This meeting will be recorded and will be on the website afterwards. And interpretation, we will have it in English, French, German, Italian, and Polish. So now I will hand over to Reineke Hammerleers, she is Chief Executive Officer of the Intergroup for Animals, who will give us an overview of the upcoming and suggested key priorities for the EU animal welfare policy making during the coming term, and which could be highlighted in the political programs of the EU parties for the upcoming EU elections. So now definitely, Reineke, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tilly, and it's very good to be here with you today on behalf of Intergroup for Animals, 91 member organizations, and present to you our key calls and priorities for the next EU elections, but also for the manifestos of the political groups. So if we go to the next slide and then to the next again, we have to skip some slides here. We go to the next, please. Yes, here you see Intergroup for Animals, 91 member organizations in 26 countries in the EU. We also have members outside the EU. But of course, for the European elections, it's very important that our member representatives in these 26 countries will participate in the Vote for Animals campaign next year. So it's the third time that we run an election campaign as a movement. Going to the next slide. And back in 2019, over 1,000 candidates signed our pledge. I will wait a bit till we are there. And you can click through immediately. Yes. Yes, yes, here we are. You can stop here, sorry. So it's the third time that we run this campaign. During the last elections, over 1,000 candidates signed our pledge for animals, out of which 120 got elected. So 120 friendly voices for the billions of animals that we work to protect. And whilst preparing for the 24 elections, I really believe that these will be the most important ones ever for animals. So we can go to the next. So let me share with you why this is the case. Why are these the most important elections for animals ever? First and foremost, next slide, please. As Tilly already mentioned, citizens are now expecting big positive change. I'm sure you are aware that out of the 10 successful ECIs, so in total only like 10 made it, but out of the 10 successful ECIs, 5 are related to animals. And of course, during this term, you see them here on the slide, but the most relevant ones for us are End the Cage Age, Safe Cruelty-Free Cosmetics, and Fur-Free Europe. And these ECIs are really also a moment of truth for democracy. You know, will the calls of these ECIs now being taken seriously by the Commission, and will several of them also translate into actual legislation? So this is at stake next year. Then second, next slide, we need to make sure that the European Parliament, the new European Parliament, really seizes on all these opportunities coming up, which won't be completed during this term. Of course, firstly, after 10 years of political stalemate, the Commission is revising the entire animal welfare acquis. We trust that we will see the 4 legislative proposals as a package by the end of this year, but clearly this Parliament won't be able to finish it. Then we will also see the first ever legislation on sustainable food production. This is also very relevant for animals and also closely related to the animal welfare package. Then we expect dedicated actions to reduce and phase out the use of animals in science, and we expect to see delivery of the action plan against wildlife trafficking. So this is all at stake during the next political term. And then third, and next slide, we don't have a clear overview yet on how many members of this intergroup will stand again. Last term it was really low, it was only 20%. We expect that this term it will hopefully be higher, but even so we really need to make sure that we have a very strong intergroup at the beginning of the next term with many cross-political MEPs who support and who want to work for animals. So how are we going to do this? Firstly, we are calling on all the political groups in this House to include animal welfare in their manifestos. And the PES and the European Greens and Renew Europe have already given civil society the opportunity to feed in their ideas and demands as to input also in their manifestos. And the ECR group won't have a manifesto, but we are asking them to include animal welfare in their vision for Europe. And we have asked also the EPP whether they envisage to also have some democratic mechanisms. Then second, we will ask all candidate MEPs to commit to animal welfare objectives and to sign up for the next intergroup. Third, we will also promote the European elections. In many countries, the turnout is really low. So we want to inform citizens that making their vote, casting their vote, will have an impact on animals too. So to tell you a bit about how it will practically work, so in January we will launch the public-facing side of the campaign, and we will start approaching candidates to take a pledge for animals. And the pledge consists of 10 commitments to improve the lives of farm animals, companion animals, equines, wild animals, and animals used in science, and I will tell you more about those commitments in a moment. So candidates will have the opportunity to select all the commitments. We can go one back, please, still. And once candidates have taken the pledge, the result will be visible on the website. The websites will be translated in all languages, and citizens will have the opportunity to take note of this, and we will actively also promote the campaign in countries on social media, and there will be dedicated events also on animals. And of course, every candidate who has signed the pledge will be invited to the next Animal Welfare Intergroup. So what's in it for the animals? What's in the pledge? We have selected 10 priorities, which wasn't easy because, of course, there are many more topics, but we feel these are the most important ones. So let me walk you through the 10 commitments. Firstly, the first 5 are related to an ambitious and comprehensive new animal welfare legislation with high standards and specific requirements for all kept animals, including farmed and companion animals, ensuring genuine welfare. And with that, we mean not just making sure that animals don't have any negative experiences, but also make sure that they have positive experiences. And within the current farming system, that is not so easy. So zooming in on what it would mean for farm animals, we can go to the next slide. We want to see the ban on the cages to be implemented within 3 to 5 years. Then on live transport, we want to see a ban on live exports. We want to see species-specific travel times of 8 hours for mammals and 4 hours for rabbits and poultry. And we want to see a ban on the transportation of unweaned animals under 12 weeks. So these are ambitious goals, but in our eyes, very, very important for animals. Then moving to the stunning of animals. Stunning, we still have one last bit on the previous slide. Stunning should be mandatory. So all animals need to be properly stunned. That is the least we can do for them. And cruel methods, such as CO2 stunning of pigs and water bath stunning of poultry, should be phased out as quickly as possible. Then moving to the next commitments. This is about fish welfare. The Cinderella species, they are farmed with large numbers and they cannot count on any protection at this very moment. So the new legislation also needs to cover their welfare during rearing, during transport, during slaughter. This should include also aquatic invertebrates and wild capture fish, the stunning, of course. And then we also want to see a ban on the emerging octopus sector. I'm sure you are aware that in Spain there's this ridiculous idea to build a massive intensive octopus farm. It hasn't been decided yet, but it may well see the light and it may be the start of octopus farming in the EU. Then going to the 4th commitment. Of course, this all goes hand in hand with making sure that imported animal products will comply with European animal welfare standards. Without that, we can forget to significantly raise the bar. We know this is still very sensitive and that some voices within the Commission want to preserve the free trade agenda, but we really think we have a strong case also at WTO level to make this case and to go for a race to the top. Then moving to the 5th commitment, and I will wait a bit to see if the presentation can be called up again. This is all about companion animals. We finally have an opportunity to make sure that the welfare of companion animals, so cats, dogs, and equines, will be properly protected through the new transport and the kept animals regulations. And this means that their welfare should be covered during breeding, transport, marketing, and sales. And of course, we also need to see proper identification and registration. It's really puzzling that in the 21st century, we still can't have cross-border identification and registration. And make sure that we have a European database to arrange that. Then turning to the 6th commitment, this is about sustainable food. We know that we will see we trust to see the sustainable food legislation still this term, but does this indeed also mean that we will move to a common food policy and really make sure that we enable also consumers to make the healthy choice and make the higher welfare choice. And this is also all about moving away from the intensive animal agriculture, investing in higher quality, less animals, plant-based diets, cultivated products, to really make sure that we can also obtain higher welfare, because without this transition, this food system transformation, we cannot guarantee higher animal welfare. It's simply impossible. Then moving to animals in science, the animals in laboratories. Well, you debated this topic on Monday evening. We are awaiting the official response from the Commission, which will come at the end of this month. And this is a great opportunity during the next term to make sure that the Commission and the Parliament will actually take dedicated steps in the transition towards non-animal science and move away from the animal models. So we trust to see a commitment from the Commission to launch a roadmap on that transition still this term, but then the next Parliament and the Commission and the Council will to make that happen indeed. Then on wild animals, and this is the 8th commitment. We are seeking support for the adoption of an EU-wide positive list on the keeping, trail and sales of all animals permitted as pets. And you have been also very active calling for this during this term. So the Commission is now working on a feasibility study, which will happen between now and the end of this term. And then it's an ultimate opportunity for the next Parliament and the Council to adopt this and to make this reality. Then slowly going towards the end of our very important priority list, the 9th commitment is about a very important one, delivering on the ECI fur-free Europe. Indeed, citizens want to see a ban on fur farming and on the placement of farm fur products on the European market. We believe it's high time. I'm sure you have followed also the debate in the Council some weeks ago. A vast majority of member states is supporting this too, also following their own bans. So it's really puzzling why the Commission would not include this in the kept animals regulation. It's a very good opportunity to make an end to this cruel and very out-to-date industry. Hey, good morning, Sirpa, and thank you for affirming that. Last but not least, the next term also provides the opportunity to give animal welfare the attention it deserves by integrating it explicitly in the job title of the relevant EU Commissioner. You've also done a lot of work on this. And in addition, we want to have an EP committee on animal welfare, which will make sure that this policy field is extensively dealt with. So yes, please, a commissioner with animal welfare in its title and a dedicated committee in this house, so we can also get out of this battle between agri, environment, PATI, and we just have one committee focusing on animals. I think citizens would like to see that. So before I want to finish my story and also hear if you have any questions, I would like to show a short video reminding us all of why we are here. Thank you.
Animal welfare is a clear priority for our work on animal protection, health and food safety.
Thank you very much.
Yes, quite a boosting video, yes, to remind us why we are here. And I really want to thank you, Reineke and Andreas and the whole team, not only for your excellent presentation, but for all your commitment, indeed, that you are doing since years for the animals. And we can see in French there is the expression, Il y a du pain sur la planche. I don't know exactly how you say it in English, but still really a lot to do. And now I will give the floor shortly to my colleagues of this intergroup who will give us some insight on what is being done by some parties already to prepare for the European elections 2024 and to inform us whether there will be a possibility to include, and I really hope so, animal welfare related references in the manifestos or political programs of the group. I will now immediately hand over to Thomas Weiss from the Greens FA group, my colleague, as he has to leave early. So that's why, and we heard, unfortunately, that there was a storm in your region and that a lot of the forest has been, destroyed or damaged. So thank you very much to stay here with us still. And he will tell us now about the plans for the European Greens. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Tilly. No, because you mentioned it, I have a 16 species, multi-age, very natural forest, and there has been a very heavy storm this night. It's on 800 meters in the Alpine Ridge. My forest is used to heavy winds, but it's a bit of a disaster, but there's still forest standing because it's a natural forest. Yeah? So if it would have been a plantation, everything would be on the ground. But however, today, exceptionally, I change my hat in this group because we're a multi-party group and it's not party politics what we're doing here, but animal welfare politics we all do together. But due to the fact that this is a question about manifestos, party election programs, you mentioned already we have an inclusive process where we also invite stakeholders and civil society to give us their inputs also for our campaign manifesto. We have been running campaigns on animal transport, on octopus farming, and the cage age, on fur farming, so several campaigns we have been running, and some of them we are still running, so we're outspoken and out in the public with our animal welfare legislation, and clearly in our election program this will play an important role, not just in the, let's say, lengthy version, but also like in the demands. We will for sure have the one or the other animal welfare demand. We're very dedicated to that topic. That may not be of all too much surprise to others here in the room, but yes, clearly we will communicate. We will be loud and public on animal welfare related issues, because even if we get the package presented end of September, it's very unlikely that we really finish the negotiations until the European elections. So we also intend to make at least to create some attention on which parties stand for animal welfare and which parties do not, and to communicate that to citizens, to maybe invite them to consider that aspect when they make a political choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Francisco, I will first give the floor to all the colleagues and then come back to your reaction. Is that okay? Good. Then I will give the floor to Sirpa Pietikainen to speak about the EPP's plans. Sirpa, you have the floor.
Sorry for coughing, and I hope I could say some of my own ideas. Because the short of the EPP is unfortunately pretty. The story of the EPP is pretty short. We are preparing our campaign for elections like other parties, and the only thing that comes close to animals is the agricultural policy and support the farmers, rural communities, and sustainable farming. So I'll try to do, and we'll try to do what we can, sort of showing out that even though we have a high level of animal protection in Europe compared to some other places, we actually should improve it when it comes to production animals. Then we are fairly supportive for this animal and transportation, as you know, on these issues. Banning in cosmetics could be not on our program, but something that what we could do. And then the new avenue that might have a chance to have a bigger support among us is the international trade agreements, what we have discussed to I don't know if you noticed that Lütgen actually proposed this oral amendment yesterday in this nature restoration law, and it though upset quite a number of our group members, but that shows that for that kind of a thinking, we do have a support that we need to mirror all the animal welfare in international trade agreements, so that's at least what we can do. Then hearing what you have been planning, and the video, that's very appealing. I think that sounds very good, as always. There are a couple of points what I might want to add. One is, my favorite about the animal welfare framework legislation, and let's see how far the Commission this time can go there or not. But sort of not any animal left behind means none of the species should be out of the coverage of, of the animal welfare and the ethics. So it should be grounded very strongly on the treaties on sentient beings. Then the second, what I've been thinking is the new Commission. And what about if we could fight to have a next Timmermans in planetary health? And it would be a commissioner where you would have the environment, the food, the animals, and the health issues. And that would be the vice president. And then one, of course, can divide the commissioners. And I think it is a very good idea to at least demand a separate commissioner for animal welfare and a special committee, because otherwise we never get out of this tit for that. But this sort of a planetary health is emerging concept, as you know, and I think that we should take the animals both from the ethical point of view, but the health, and not only this kind of, the zoonosis is the classical way of thinking, but if the planet and the environment can't sustain healthy animals and a healthy amount of animals, it can't sustain ourselves either. And so maybe we could look at a bit closer. Then my third point would be these trade agreements myself also. And I think that we could appeal to some of the farmers as well on here, sort of showing that the egg is not always an egg, or the broiler chicken is not always a chicken. And last but not least came to my mind when you said that the other parties are probably going to raise the animal welfare much more than us. And so you asked the voters to check up and to, of course, to get votes for you. It's fair. But could you add on your campaigning, sort of forcing people to ask all of the parties in these questions, what do you think? What do you think? Because I know that in this animal production and fur farming at least, there's a lot of latent support in EPP and in our member parties, but because the agri-lobby is so strong, it never sort of gets through to be high enough in the agenda. But in the case, it really would sort of come on the faces of politicians. It might make that kind of a breakthrough. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sirpa. And to be honest, we know that the fight you must do in the EPP context is probably much harder than we have to do in the Greens effort. So thank you very much for your commitment there for the animals. And then I will give the floor to Niels, also to hear about the socialist plans regarding for the election regarding animal welfare. Niels, you have the floor.
Thank you, Tilly. We are preparing our manifesto, the Socialists and Democrats in Europe. We have this European party, so we have the S&D group in the European Parliament, and we have the PES as our European party, the Party of European Socialists. And they are preparing the manifesto right now. The plan is that in November, we have a Congress in November, and there we will adopt a resolution, which is a longer document. And then from that resolution, we will make a manifesto where we take some of the key points from the resolution it's a shorter document that we can, that is more easy to oversee. Right now it is being discussed what should be included, and so I cannot tell you anything about the conclusions because the discussions are ongoing. But I can say that I know that animal welfare is going to be in there, it's certainly going to be in there in an abstract way, so that we, think that this is important and we want to support this cause. The question is how concrete it's going to be. We have also, and I can perhaps relate to Sirpa, what you say, that we have in our group, of course, different opinions on animal welfare. There are some members that are more connected to the agricultural sector and so on. So that plays a role for how concrete we will be in our manifesto. I will say this, that one of the 10 points that you have, the Animal Welfare Commissioner, I think that is something that we should have in our manifesto in the S&D. That's something I personally speak for, and I think perhaps I could say to all of the groups, including the EPP and the Greens and all other groups who are here, that I would recommend that we take this fight on the Animal Welfare Commissioner in the manifesto, that we have a commissioner dedicated to animal welfare also in the title. And I think this will be doable to get through because we can discuss the concrete cases on how long should animal transports be, and there will be disagreements in my group. But the point of having an animal welfare commissioner, I mean, if we say that we're serious about this topic and that we wanted to play a role, then we cannot say that we don't want an animal welfare commissioner, I think. So I think that we should be able to find consensus around this. And I think it is very important that we have this in all of our manifestos. And I don't know, Sirpa, in the EPP, if it is possible, an animal welfare commissioner to push for that, because that would not be, I know that in the EPP and in the S&D there would be disagreement, for example, on animal transports, how long should they be, or the other points that are being mentioned here. There will be disagreements about this, but can we not agree that we should have this commissioner, and then we take the discussion from there? That is something I will fight for concretely in our manifesto. I hope we can get it in there. I think there's a good chance, and I would recommend that you also fight for that in your manifestos, because then when we have the new commissioner, when we have the new commission in the beginning of the next term, we will be able to, as a parliament, say this is our demand, and we will not vote for you. It's the parliament that approves or disapproves the commission. So we can have that demand, and if we stand together here, I think it should be possible. And then I will say that I think the 10 points are very good, and I hope that I hope that you will have a great success in promoting these points, and also asking the members, the candidates, do you sign up for this? I know this is the whole point, but the more you can do to make this clear, who signs up for these points, who doesn't, I think that's going to be important. And these are not, all of them are not uncontroversial points. There will be disagreements about them. So it will also hopefully be able to spark some debates where it will be obvious to the voters who stands for what. And I know you have many member organizations in the different countries. I hope you can use these to promote these points, to get them to live in the election campaign, because that would really be important. I agree with you, Reineke, that this will be the most important year and election for animal welfare, because we have so much legislation coming up, and as you said, Tom, it will not be done, all of it, before the election. So it will be, the election will very much determine where we land on these issues. Animal transports and the cage shades, the whole overhaul of the animal welfare legislation so important. So much is at stake, and I hope and I think we can stand together here to push this agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Niels, and especially for calling that we together should really fight for certain causes, to have them really together in our manifesto in order to be stronger. And you are completely right. At the end of the day, it's the Parliament that agrees on the Commission. So we are also able to put some conditions. So I think you put good points there. Thank you. I will give the floor now to Petras Astrovicius to speak about the Renew plan regarding animal welfare. Petras, you have the floor.
Good morning to everybody. It's good to see you. And indeed, Renew Europe is on its mission to renew Europe. And we hope our contribution to animal welfare issues spectrum will be as positive as it could. We always have a possibility to be a bit better and more caretaking. Is just one photo of the Ukrainian soldier in the field of sunflowers with a cat under his coat. You can see, I mean, people remain humanistic whatever it takes, whatever situations they are. And it's a good indication that we can do always a mile more than we thought before. Concretely on Renew Europe, we already have sent a letter, a group of colleagues, including me, to ALDE Group, which is already in a good process of elaborating its next manifesto for 2024. So we sent a very clear message asking for focusing on animal welfare policy as such, and in particular we made the reference to the animal welfare portfolio, in particular given to a single commissioner. As commissioner job description title might be Commissioner for Animal Welfare. I mean, I agree, it might be more, it might be a bit more complex, but in any case, if it is every time introduced he or she as a commissioner, not just for health and something else, but for animal welfare in particular, I think it would bring a very strong message to all politicians as well as wide public at large. So that is something is already done. Of course, we will follow closely the process of elaboration of manifesto. Indeed, keeping a close eye on it. But what is important as well, you know, as in any European elections, main campaign is going on the national level. So we're elected by our citizens. I mean, you can't avoid this. So that's why I think we should do something more to reach local parties, in particular those most promising and open-minded towards animal welfare. And asking our parties, members of which we are, to include in manifesto. I'll do it on my party manifesto as well. A clear line, indication, and highlighting during the public debates, because it's probably the most important thing. I mean, to reach out local electorate in any case, as well. During elections, usually we are approached by NGOs working in a field of animal welfare, and they present you a questionnaire. Are you animal friendly, animal policy friendly or not? So this is a great thing as well, because I mean they make it public. They present their, let's say, assessment, who is who and who is more pro, less pro. I think this is again something what makes sense, and if our group could again remind and probably activate those NGOs, maybe a common questionnaire for Europe around could be made, just to have a kind of standard questionnaire, I think would be a good thing to have as well. And finally, if to empower us with some campaigning material, maybe we could, because we have some resources and technical capacities, maybe we can be given, good pictures, those videos in national languages where we can be a part of maybe, commenting. I think it would be really, but of course, national languages. All 24 national languages we have in the European Union. It might help us to raise awareness and to push forward our policy line much. So that's why things are underway, under control, I would say, in a good sense of this word. And I'm looking forward to have even more proactive animal welfare campaigning in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petras, for your input also, and happy to hear also that Renew supports the Commissioner of Animal Welfare, and you named also already measures that we need to do during the campaign, work with NGOs, etc. But now I open the floor to Francisco. He was the first raising his hand, and then I have Maria, Caroline, Sarah.
Yes, thanks. So it's good that you are already preparing this initiative. I think it's very relevant. I remember when I was running 5 years ago, it was a huge topic, obviously, because I come from an animal welfare background. But also through the communications, we kind of understood who was defending what. And so obviously also on social media and graphically, it should be interesting with those kind of lists, who defends what level do they go if they commit, if not. So that work, I think it's also very relevant because graphically people understand easier. So if they go the extra mile and, well, they want to stop animal transport, long leases or not, so they can go like 3 of the 10, they can go 10 of the 10, and also that it's relevant for people to understand sometimes how is the scale of commitment of some groups. I would say also, if you have this on the website and if you have the possibility also to have like a part that would add like the extra mile, if the party would go the extra mile. What do I mean by this? Because there are some specific issues at national level. They are very relevant and are not obviously integrated on these committees. For example, I'm thinking about Portugal and Spain. Bullfighting is one of the key areas that's, well, it can be legislated here in the European Union. I remember in the beginning of the mandate, we managed to pass an amendment on the common agricultural policy when we are talking about funding. In the 2 pillars. In the first pillar it didn't pass, in the second it passed in the reading of the parliament, and then in the trilogues it got tossed away. But that had a huge impact internationally also. So some specific things, I'm thinking also dolphinarians in Portugal is also a huge issue. So having something like, will you go the extra mile, and then have like those things that can be more relevant to a region or a country, but are not overall like the European things that, well, you stated they are the most relevant, so 10 points, don't have nothing against it, just to try to add up to this. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this excellent idea, I must say. Maria, you asked also for the word. Maria Neuscher.
Ich spreche jetzt extra Deutsch, denn
I'm going to speak German on purpose because we have interpreters here and nobody's speaking German, which we can't have, can we? Anyway, I just wanted to pick up what Niels was saying. I think he gave a right description in the S&D. There are differing positions. I come from the SPD side, the German SPD, and for us it's very important because, of course, animal welfare issues are so important in Germany. Animal transport, for example. Animal transport is something that always hits the headlines in the newspapers. And then the concentration in terms of the sort of slaughterhouses, huge slaughterhouses, and I think people realize there's something wrong there. And then I'd like to support also what was said on the S&D position here within the European Parliament. I mean, we have so many different positions in different countries, and but there's a very strong position on animal welfare in Germany. We want a strong animal welfare group, and in the campaign period, we want animal welfare issues to be discussed. That's something that we definitely want. Animal welfare has to be a selection criteria in terms of who's selected, but the most important thing for us is that pressure is brought to bear in terms of what happens and then shortly after the elections, or when it comes to appointing commissioners or defining their portfolios. That, I think, is the important moment, because in the campaign, everybody wants to look good and say, yes, we're in favour of animal welfare. Even people who are not in favour of animal welfare will say in the campaign that that's what they're doing. And of course, for the electorate, they don't know. Is that sort of authentic? Are they really animal welfare sort of advocates or not? So and the cage age, they're all going to say, yes, we're in favour. But the question is, will we manage to do that? I think soon after the elections, what we need to do is get a group together, possibly an online meeting of elected MEPs from all the parties, but very quickly after the elections, so that they can express their commitments and so that we can sort of channel into the work of the S&D, for example. I mean, the worst thing would be having a vacuum of some 10 days, because over that period, a lot of things will be sorted out. So I think we have got to third day after the elections, we did an online sitting. Those people who really want to do something in terms of animal welfare have to meet. It's a wonderful instrument, online meetings. We didn't have that tool before. We do now. So I think irrespective of where we are located geographically, we can meet. And I think we need to plan for that now and make these deadlines public before the elections. Thank you. Thank you. I think you're coming forward with some wonderful ideas. I think we'll jot them all down. An excellent idea. I think we've got to sort of be in our starting blocks, as it were, straight away after the elections, make it clear what our expectations are. That's an excellent idea. I mean, sort of touch wood. I hope we're all around in the next parliament. Next speaker, Caroline.
Merci Tilly. Alors...
Thanks, Tilly. Lots of things to say, lots of priorities for me when it comes to animal welfare. We're within the Green Party, we're sort of putting things in place at the national level, 15 priority measures within the party when it comes to animal welfare. And I'm sure that these measures will, at the top of our agenda. We're working on a programme or a manifesto, and I'm glad that in the 10 points that you listed, there's fish, octopus. I mean, we're seeing the development of aquaculture and in the cage age, but we see the development of aquaculture. What is aquaculture? A fish in a cage, basically. So there is a problem there for me. And in the Fisheries Committee, we fought to get a hearing on animal welfare in respect to fishing. We've had one. I mean, it was a victory, fine, chalk that one up, but we've got to continue in that area. A lot of the subjects, use of animals for recreational purposes, animal husbandry, transport. I think it's important that civil society be with us on our side. There are lots of European citizens' initiatives that are up and running, so I think there's a lot of support. There are lots of NGOs who are working on the ground, doing a lot. That's important. Now, in France, in terms of who's doing what, we have a platform, animal policies, and there's a classification of elected representatives, political people at national, European level, who's doing what there. I mean, having discussed matters with the person who's running the platform, there is an idea of a platform in respect of the European elections, defining candidates in terms of their manifestos, their programmes, what they've done in the past, what their track record is. And I think that would be a good idea because, as you've said, animal welfare and revision of animal welfare legislation, that'll take some time. 2024, I think it's going to be a major issue, but I don't think it should be just one isolated issue. I think we have got to be able to sort of chalk up a certain number of victories within the European Parliament when it comes to animal welfare issues. So I hope to be able to back with you in the next Parliament and defend animal welfare issues. Well, I very much hope so too. So thank you very much indeed, Caroline, for your commitment on behalf of all the sort of animals in the seas. This idea of a common platform, NGOs, politicians, so that we can do something sort of coherent. Pascal Durand. Pascal, good morning. Well, I do apologise, really, for arriving with some delay. I'm not going to be with you in the next Parliament, as you know. So I feel I have a freer hand, as it were, in terms of the forthcoming campaign. More of a sort of a free agent. I think what we need to think of is something that works in towns and cities. And I think the national parties need to have a reference candidate in respect of animal welfare issues throughout the whole legislative term, because indeed in the elections, during the campaign, everybody will want to sort of look good, come off looking good when it comes to defending animal welfare issues. But I think if each national party were to identify in the campaign one figure, one person who would be responsible for keeping up the sort of channels of communication, being able to provide information on what's happening, follow up and so on, that would be a good idea. There's a certain number of towns and cities who are appointing elected representatives working together with NGOs and associations. Now, within groups, I'm not talking about groups such as the Greens, where there's such a pro sort of animal welfare lobby, things that have happened normally, but there are groups where animal rights defenders are in a minority. So I think it's important that they do more on behalf of their group in terms of liaising with NGOs. I mean, that's a proposal that could have the backing of NGOs, but that individual parties could adopt. Saying, yes, we have a reference person, an interlocutor that you can get in touch with in the next Parliament, as Caroline has just suggested. So that's just my modest contribution to the future of the Animal Welfare Intergroup. And although I'm sort of bowing out, I wish you every success in the next Parliament. Thank you, Pascal. Thank you for that wonderful idea. I think it's part and parcel of the same logic, if you like, having an animal welfare commissioner, and then further to sort of decline that at a national or local level, because that would at the same time confer greater visibility on everything that has to do with animal welfare. I mean, I'm not going to make any lengthy statement here, but how we are going to miss you. I think your commitment to the animal welfare issues will miss you indeed. And we're not going to leave you quietly in your sort of own small corner, as it were. So hopefully we can still reach out to you and tap into your support, your experience.
Voilà, je me out.
I'm a fan of yours anyway, so I give the floor to Sarah.
Merci, je vais parler.
Thank you. I'm going to speak German.
Oui. Well, in Austrian, actually. I do apologize. I had a very important meeting, so I don't actually know what's been said yet on this particular package. I know a lot has been said on the animal welfare package. We've heard this idea of an animal welfare commissioner or an animal welfare minister. I don't know whether this would go through if it were just on its own. Maybe it could be linked up to sustainability. Then we'd have a greater chance, perhaps. I don't know whether Timmermans is going to be vice president again, quite frankly, but let's see. As I was outside, I'm not too sure whether you said something about the next Parliament. There are certain things that we should not lose sight of. Obviously, there's going to be the upcoming CAP reform. And I think we are going to have to make sure that we prepare our priorities for animal welfare in the next CAP so that they're better taken account of, and so that we can do more about reducing extensive animal farming, so that we have lower animal stock densities, lower numbers in the herds, because I think that's an important point, and I think it's something we really do have to prepare for the next European Parliament. Then, of course, there's the European animal welfare label. Do we want this to be binding across the European Union? So We may want to demand that, give support to that. And obviously, we want to make sure that anybody eating an animal product knows everything, that the label is transparent. And in that way, perhaps over time, the standards would be raised. Obviously, if we do have a label, it should be mandatory. It would have to be introduced in steps. It would have to be easily understood so that anybody looking at the label would understand what it's about. And then, of course, we would need independent controls, a certification system. I just want to mention this. I know we have some of this already, but it's going to be one of the priorities that we need under the next Parliament. So that's by way of my input. I know a lot has already been said, but I feel that the link between animal welfare and the next CAP is going to be very important, because then, of course, this is going to be the next fight with the lobbies, the farming officials, etc. We saw this yesterday already. But I think we have to prove minimum standards, and this is important for fish and rabbits as well. Well, thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you for making this link together with CAP. There is still room for us to better coordinate. You mentioned the animal welfare label. We know that a lot of animal welfare washing is going on, so that is an important point, and there are always animals we forget. You've mentioned those as well, and we have to keep an eye on those. So thank you very much. Thank you, Reinicke.
Members and colleagues, I found it very, very interesting. I must say, Sirpa wanted still to say something. Okay, we are a little bit over time, but voilà. But Sirpa, you have the floor.
Sorry to interrupt you, but very briefly, I got the idea from this discussion. Why wouldn't, and we can all endorse it, contact the public broadcasting company and try to have next spring Animals Day in all public broadcastings, where you could have documentary panel debates about EU politics and animal welfare, and experts telling this and that. That might raise that kind of a voters' interest on this topic.
Another excellent idea to give visibility to the animal welfare issues. So thank you very much. I know the interpreters are always very tolerant with us, and I will like to thank them for their supplementary time they give us. And voilà, thank you all the members. Thank you, Reinicke. I found it very interesting. I must say I was a little bit skeptical to speak already about the manifestos of the parties, but now I think it was exactly the right moment to do so, to highlight all these very important subjects. Just to say that the next Animal Welfare Intergroup will take place on the 14th of September, because we still have Animal Welfare Intergroups before the elections, and we will talk there about higher broiler welfare, and I look forward to see you all there. And before that, please resource yourself, enjoy summertime with your friends and family, and take care of you and of the animals and of the environment. Thank you very much. Group picture. Let's take, for those who are still here, let's take a group picture, with our commitment for animal welfare. Sorry, that's good. Thank you, Andrea.